I never expected to walk into my own home and feel like a stranger in it. Yet that Thursday afternoon changed something deep inside me, something that had been quietly cracking for years. The hallway was unusually silent when I opened the door, grocery bags hanging painfully from my hands. I stepped forward, ready to put the bags down, when a soft click echoed through the apartment, the unmistakable closing of a suitcase. My heart stopped. There, standing in the middle of my living room like she owned the place, was Chloe, my daughter-in-law. Always polished, always perfect, always performing. Her hair was pinned neatly, her crisp blouse tucked in like she was posing for one of her Instagram lifestyle posts. But it wasn't her appearance that froze me. It was the sight around her. 2 giant suitcases. Right in the heart of my home. She blinked twice like she hadn't expected me to arrive so soon. Then she gave that tiny laugh she used whenever she wanted to sugarcoat disrespect. "Oh, Ava, you startled me. We just came a little early," she said, waving her hand casually as if the suitcases were decorative pieces. "Don't worry, we'll only be here for a few days, maybe a week. Our place is unbearable with the renovation noise." She said we. She said here. She said it like this wasn't my home, but a temporary rest stop they were entitled to use. I didn't move, not even to put down the heavy grocery bags cutting into my arms. I didn't trust myself to move. "Did you ask me before settling in?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, an anchor against the trembling I felt inside. Her smile tightened. "Ava, please don't start. You live alone, you have 2 empty bedrooms, it shouldn't be an issue." Empty. The word stabbed deeper than she realized. She saw my silence as resistance and stepped into it as if filling a void. "Besides, Dion said it'd be fine. He's on his way with the rest of our things. My son. My only child. The boy I raised alone. The man I supported even when I had nothing but breath left in my body. He thought this was fine." I finally put the grocery bags down. The cans clattered loudly. Chloe flinched. She could sense the shift in the room but didn't understand it yet. I walked past her toward the dining table, my pulse beating so loudly I could feel it in my fingertips. Something inside me, something that had been quietly suffocating for decades, finally inhaled. "Chloe," I said slowly, "you didn't answer my question." Her smile faded just a fraction. "Ava, don't make this into something it's not. We just need a little time. And honestly, I thought you'd be happy for the company. You always say the apartment gets quiet." She threw that line in like a casual remark, but it slid under my skin like a blade. A normal person might think she was being thoughtful. But I knew better. She wasn't addressing my feelings. She was weaponizing them. The apartment wasn't empty. It was peaceful. Silence wasn't loneliness. It was freedom. But in Chloe's world, everything existed for convenience. "Does Dion know you're already here?" I asked. She exhaled loudly, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Of course he knows. It was his idea. Honestly, Ava, you're making this weird." Before I could reply, I heard the front door unlock. Dion walked in, carrying 2 more bags, wearing the relaxed smile of a man who had absolutely no idea he'd crossed a line. "Mom, perfect timing." He grinned and kissed the air near my cheek. "Chloe must have told you. We'll only be here a short while. You won't even notice us." I didn't lean into the kiss. His smile faltered. "Mom, what's wrong?" It amazed me how easily he dismissed my expression, like I was overreacting to a spilled cup of milk, not an intrusion into my life. "You brought bags into my home without asking," I said. My voice didn't shake, it didn't rise. It came out calm, too calm. Dion laughed lightly, brushing it off. "Mom, come on. I called you twice. You didn't answer. We figured you wouldn't mind. It's not like we're moving in permanently." He opened my refrigerator, grabbed a bottle of water, drank from it. A tiny act, but it tore through me. Because it said everything he felt. Your space is mine. Your things are mine. Your boundaries don't matter. I took a slow breath. "How long is a few days?" I asked. "A week," Dion said. maybe 2. 2 weeks. 2 weeks of losing my sanctuary. 2 weeks of sharing bathrooms, schedules, routines. 2 weeks of pretending I didn't feel suffocated in my own home. And they hadn't even bothered to ask. Mom, Dion continued, don't make this harder. We're not asking for much. I lifted my eyes to his. You didn't ask at all. A silence fell, thick, sharp pressing. Chloe shifted behind him, crossing her arms, her confidence beginning to crack. Dion's smile faded, his face stiffened. Mom, seriously. Something old and tired inside me finally snapped cleanly in half. This is my home, I said. Not a spare hotel room you can walk into whenever you decide it's convenient. And for the first time since he was a child, my son had no quick answer. Not one. And that, I realized, was only the beginning. I walked down the hallway with a heaviness in my chest that didn't come from anger alone. No, this was something older, something that had been gathering dust in the corners of my life, waiting for a moment exactly like this to rise up. The guest room door was ajar. Chloe's voice floated faintly behind me, hurried whispers to Dion, whispers that made it clear neither of them expected me to question a thing. But I didn't stop. I pushed the door open. And then I saw it. Not the scattered suitcases in the hall. Not the bags Dion carried in. But the truth. Clothes already laid out on the bed in neat, confident stacks. Toiletries arranged on my dresser like they had lived here for years. 2 pairs of shoes lined up against the wall. And a laptop plugged in beside the nightstand, charging as if the room belonged to someone else entirely. This wasn't a few days. This wasn't temporary. This was an occupation. A quiet takeover. Dion appeared behind me in the doorway. His hands were in his pockets, his expression tight, his jaw clicking with restrained irritation. A week, I said without turning around. You said a week. He hesitated. Mom, I told you 2 at the most. I pointed at the opened laptop, the charger, the clothes. This looks like someone planning at least a month. He rolled his eyes, just slightly, just enough for me to catch it before he masked it with a forced calm. Mom, we're not going to live out of a suitcase like backpackers. Chloe works remotely. Obviously, she has to set up her stuff. You're reading too much into this. No, I said softly. I'm finally reading it exactly as it is. I stepped out of the room, walked back into the living room, and there she was, Chloe, sitting in my armchair. The one by the window. The one I saved for, the one I sank into every morning with coffee and every evening with quiet. The one place that always felt like mine. She looked up at me, her fingers still scrolling on her phone like nothing around her belonged to anyone but her. Ava, relax, she gave a practiced smile. I promise we'll be so little trouble you'll barely know we're here. I'll be in the room working all day. Dion, gone most mornings. We can totally stay out of your way. Stay out of my way, I repeated internally. That was the problem. They weren't in my way. They were in my life. I walked toward her slowly. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Something in my silence must have spoken louder than anything because Chloe's smile faded. Her body stiffened. And then, almost sheepish, she rose from the armchair. Oh, did you want this seat? No, I replied. I want you to understand it's mine. And that was when Dion entered the room again, stopping mid-step, reading the charged air instantly. Mom, he said carefully, can we talk, just the 2 of us? I nodded. Maybe, somewhere in him, the son I raised was still reachable. Maybe if we stepped away from Chloe's interruptions, I could help him see how deeply this hurt. We went into the kitchen. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, brows drawn in an expression I had grown familiar with over the years. Half impatience, half confusion. All right, Mom, he sighed. Talk to me. What is really bothering you? Because this is about more than a few bags. More than the bags. More than the water bottle. More than my stolen armchair. I looked at him and saw not a grown man, but the little boy who used to run to me whenever something scared him. The teenager who always believed I would fix everything. The adult who still saw me as someone who would always say yes. Always. You bother me, Dion, I said quietly. His eyes widened. What? You grew up believing my life existed around yours. That if you needed me, I'd be there without question. That my home, my time, my peace were extensions of your convenience. That's not fair, he snapped. I come see you all the time. You come when you need something, I answered. And when was the last time you came simply because you wanted my company? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing. Good. Let the silence speak. You visited when you needed me to watch your dog, I continued. When you wanted to store boxes in my garage, when you needed emergency money, when you needed a place to crash for one night after fighting with Chloe, always for a reason, never just to see me. Mom, you're overthinking this. No, Dion, I'm finally thinking. He shook his head, running his hands through his hair in frustration. This is ridiculous. You're turning this into something dramatic. We just need a place to stay. And you never considered that maybe I need something too, I replied. Maybe I need privacy. Maybe I need peace. Maybe I have a life even if you don't see it. He scoffed. What plans do you have, Mom? You're retired. Retired. That word hit me harder than Chloe. Empty. Retired meant useless. Retired meant disposable. Retired meant free space waiting to be filled. I inhaled deeply. My life doesn't stop existing because I'm no longer working. It doesn't revolve around being convenient for you. He threw his head back and groaned. This is unbelievable. No, I whispered. What's unbelievable is that you walked into my home and assumed you didn't need permission. I'm your son, he said. Why would I need permission? And there it was. The truth. The entire root of the problem. Family, in his mind, meant access. Unlimited. Unrestricted. Automatic. As if being my son meant my house was his second bedroom. Asking permission isn't disrespectful, I said. Assuming you don't need to ask is. He shook his head in disbelief. I didn't think it would be an issue. You didn't think of me at all. His lips tightened. His nostrils flared. His cheeks brightened with anger, not because he disagreed, but because he knew I was right. The kitchen felt too small for our conversation. Our history felt too heavy. My heart felt too tired. We're staying, he said finally. We're already settled. No, I said, you're not. A silence, so thick it felt alive, settled between us. I watched his expression change. Annoyance, disbelief, anger, and then something colder. You're not serious, he whispered. I am, I answered. You both need to leave. After everything we've done for you, he said. That was when I realized this wasn't going to end quietly. After everything we've done for you. The words slammed into me with the force of a storm. For a second, I genuinely wondered if I'd misheard him. But no, his face carried that familiar expression, indignation wrapped in innocence, a combination he'd perfected over the years. I stared at him, stunned. Everything you've done for me. He didn't hesitate. Yes, we check on you. We take you out. I help with anything you need. Chloe even suggested you come stay with us last year, remember. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the absurdity was so enormous it didn't fit inside me. You take me out on my birthday, I corrected. And the last time you helped with anything was 5 years ago when you drove me to the airport. And Chloe's invitation was 2 nights after she complained to your sister that I criticize her kitchen. His lips parted, as if he wanted to protest, but the truth was too clear, too solid to argue against. He knew. He absolutely knew. But admitting it would require him to confront himself, and he'd never learned how to do that. Mom, he said, lowering his voice as if I were the irrational one, you're making this bigger than it is. You broke into my peace, I answered. You didn't even knock. Chloe appeared at the doorway then, arms crossed, watching like someone observing a scene she already believed she'd win. Is this still going on? She asked sharply. Dion, we have work in the morning. Can you just explain to her that this is temporary? Explain to me. Like I was a stubborn tenant, refusing to cooperate with my landlords. Dion turned to her. I'm trying, but she's not listening. I blinked, not listening. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with a frustration I'd swallowed for far too long. I put them on the kitchen counter to steady myself. Chloe, I said, could you give us a moment? This is between me and my son. She didn't move. I'm part of this too. Of course she was. Dion looked between us, helpless, caught between the two pillars of his life, one who raised him and one he chose. And he stood there like a boy trapped between two doors, unsure which one to close. Chloe stepped forward. Ava, you're making this uncomfortable for all of us. We're family. Families support each other. Families share space. We're not invaders. Invaders? No, she didn't say that word. But the implication was dripping off every syllable. You came into my home without asking, I said. That is an invasion. She scoffed. Oh, please, don't be dramatic. My jaw clenched. Everything in this conversation came down to that one word. Dramatic. Overreacting. Emotional. Whenever a woman, especially a mother, set boundaries, people labeled her dramatic. When exactly were you planning to ask? I asked her. After you finished unpacking, after you changed the sheets, after you rearranged the dresser. She flushed. I was trying to make the room comfortable. For whom? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The quietness made the words heavier. For us, she said finally, lifting her chin. Dion exhaled sharply, tired of the back and forth. Mom, we're not leaving. It's done. We're staying for 2 weeks. You need to accept that. Accept. They really believed that was my only option. My heart pounded, not from fear, from clarity. I straightened my back. No, I said, I don't. He frowned. Mom, you don't get to decide how I live in my own home, I said firmly. You don't get to walk in, take over, and expect me to rearrange my life because you chose not to plan yours. Chloe's arms tightened across her chest. Dion's jaw flexed. They stared at me with disbelief, as if the idea of me standing up for myself was some kind of betrayal. And then Dion said something that cut deeper than anything before it. Why is this such a big deal? You're alone. We're giving you company. You should appreciate that. Alone. There it was. The word they both weaponized. Chloe stepped forward. We're doing you a favor, Ava. Being alone isn't healthy. This will be good for you. Good for me. They weren't just dismissing my feelings. They were rewriting them. You think I'm lonely, I said softly. Dion shrugged. Aren't you? No, I answered. I'm not lonely. I'm at peace. They didn't respond. They couldn't, because they had never once asked what peace meant to me. They assumed quiet meant emptiness. They assumed solitude meant suffering. They assumed my life needed filling. I took a breath, a deep, grounding one. You have 2 choices, I said. Either you pack your things and leave tonight, or I call the police and let them handle it. The color drained from Dion's face. Are you serious? Very. You'd call the cops on your own son, he shouted. Chloe's eyes widened, but not from fear, from outrage. Wow, just wow, that's cold, Ava. Cold? No. Cold would have been saying nothing and letting resentment rot us from the inside out. Cold would have been pretending I was okay. Cold would have been silence. This was warmth, heat, fire. This was reclaiming my space, my voice, my life. I don't want to do that, I said calmly, but I will if you force me to. Dion stepped closer, lowering his voice. Mom, don't make this ugly. I'm not making it anything, I replied. I'm protecting what's mine. For a long moment, no one spoke. The room felt like it was holding its breath. And then, someone knocked on the front door. 3 loud, unexpected knocks. They echoed through the hallway like thunder, snapping all our heads toward the sound. Chloe whispered, Who is that? I didn't answer, because I already knew. I hadn't called anyone, but someone else had seen them dragging suitcases in earlier. Someone who cared. Someone who had been watching over me quietly for months. My neighbor. The retired officer. The one who noticed everything. And he wasn't knocking casually. He was knocking with purpose. The air thickened. Dion looked nervous. Chloe looked pale. And I. For the first time that day, I felt still. And this time, it wasn't my voice that shook them, it was his. The knocks came again, 3 firm, deliberate raps that carried authority. Not anger, not impatience, authority. The kind that made Chloe stiffen and made Dion take a half step back without realizing it. I walked toward the door with steady steps. My hands were trembling earlier, but not now. Now they were calm. Because I knew exactly who it was. I opened the door. And there he stood. Mr. Hale. My neighbor of 5 years, retired police officer. A man whose presence alone could freeze a room mid-breath. He wasn't tall or intimidating in size, but his posture, straight, unbending, quietly powerful, had the kind of weight that made people choose their words wisely. He took one look at me, then leaned slightly to peer inside the apartment. Ava, he said gently, is everything all right? Chloe's voice cracked from behind me. Yes, we were just talking. Nothing is wrong. Mr. Hale didn't respond to her. He kept his eyes on me. Ava, he repeated, softer this time, but with an undertone that told me he wasn't buying anyone's performance. I stepped aside, letting him in. He walked in with the confidence of a man who'd seen every kind of situation imaginable and knew exactly how to handle ones that were spiraling. Dion tried to straighten up, tried to look composed, but Mr. Hale's presence swallowed his forced confidence whole. What's going on here? Mr. Hale asked, scanning the suitcases, the open bags, the unpacked belongings scattered around the living room. Dion swallowed hard. Nothing, just a temporary stay. We came a little early. A little early, Mr. Hale repeated, his eyes narrowing just slightly. He turned to Chloe. And you brought all these bags for a short visit. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked at Dion as if he might rescue her with an explanation, but he was already drowning in Mr. Hale's stare. Finally, she forced out, We're family. We don't need permission to be here. Mr. Hale lifted an eyebrow. Actually, you do. Her face stiffened. He turned back to me. Ava, did you invite them? The question was simple, but its weight was enormous. And the moment I opened my mouth, I felt the power of the truth settle over the entire apartment. No, I said, I didn't. Silence fell so sharply, it felt like the air itself cracked. Chloe's lips parted in disbelief. Dion's eyes widened, as if he hadn't expected me to say it so clearly. Mr. Hale nodded slowly, turning toward them. Then you two need to start packing. Excuse me, Chloe snapped. You can't tell us. I can, he said calmly, because Ava lives alone and she is a senior resident. I'm designated as her safety contact in the building's database. That means if anything suspicious happens, like people moving into her home without her consent, I'm notified. I hadn't known that. He arranged that months ago, quietly, respectfully, without making me feel incapable. Chloe's face drained of color. Dion's anger flickered. Hold on, this is a family matter. Mr. Hale stepped forward just a bit. Son, let me make something very clear to you. His voice lowered, steady, firm, unwavering. When someone enters a senior's home without permission, that is not a family matter. It's a legal matter. Dion's breath hitched. We didn't break in. We have keys. Mr. Hale turned to me. Did you give them keys recently? No, I said. I gave Dion a key years ago for emergencies, not for moving in. Chloe jumped in. This is an emergency. Our apartment is being renovated. Mr. Hale didn't even blink. That's not Ava's emergency. The room went still. He continued, You don't barge into someone's home because your life is inconvenient. That's not how family works. That's not how anyone works. Chloe looked like she was ready to explode. We didn't barge in. She wasn't home. We were going to tell her when she arrived. Mr. Hale folded his arms. Exactly. You settled in before asking. He looked at the open suitcases, the plugged-in laptop, the toiletries spread across the dresser visible from the hallway. He exhaled sharply. You weren't planning to stay a week. You were planning to stay as long as you wanted. Dion bristled. Why are you involved in this at all? This is between me and my mom. Mr. Hale didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Because your mother didn't feel safe, he said. And someone needs to stand with her until you understand what that means. Dion opened his mouth, but Mr. Hale held up a hand. No justification, he warned. No excuses, respect your mother, pack your things now. The quiet command in his tone cut through the entire room. Chloe's voice trembled with fury. Ava, are you really doing this, after everything? I looked at her calmly. I'm doing what I should have done a long time ago. Dion stepped forward, desperation creeping into his expression. Mom, please, you're choosing a stranger's side over your own son. He's not a stranger, I said. He's someone who respects my boundaries. And we do, Dion whispered. The question was almost pathetic, because the answer was already written across the living room. You walked into my home without permission, I said softly. Do you really need me to spell it out? He didn't respond. Mr. Hale stepped aside, giving them space. You have 10 minutes, he said, or I call the building manager. Chloe looked like she wanted to scream. Dion looked like he wanted to argue. But neither of them dared. Because Mr. Hale wasn't suggesting. He was stating a fact. They moved slowly, angrily, grabbing clothes, unplugging chargers, slamming suitcase zippers, whispering harsh words under their breath. They didn't look at me. Not once. And in the heavy silence between each shuffle and zipper pull, I felt something strange blooming inside me. Relief. Not joy. Not triumph. Just relief. For the first time in years, my home felt like it was returning to me, piece by piece, breath by breath. When Dion rolled the last suitcase to the door, he paused. He didn't turn around. He just said, "You'll regret this." I didn't even flinch. No, I whispered. I regret letting it go this far. Chloe squeezed past him, her glare sharp and venomous. Don't expect us to come running when you're lonely. I met her eyes calmly. I'm not lonely. Mr. Hale stepped beside me, his presence steady and reassuring. And then, they left. The door clicked shut behind them. Everything went still. Everything went quiet. But this time, the quiet wasn't emptiness. It was freedom. It came from Mr. Hale, and it changed everything I thought I knew about that night. The door clicked shut with a finality I felt in my bones. The apartment was quiet again, so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the living room clock, even my own heartbeat calming inch by inch. For a moment, I simply stood there, staring at the door as if it might swing open again. But it didn't. Instead, the silence settled around me like a warm blanket, gentle, steady, familiar. My peace, returned, restored. I exhaled, long and slow, the way a person does after holding their breath for years. Mr. Hale didn't speak right away. He just stood a respectful distance away, present, but not intrusive. A calm pillar in the middle of my storm. After a few seconds, he said softly, "You did the right thing, Ava." My throat tightened, not from sadness, but from something that felt dangerously close to gratitude. I don't feel like it, I admitted. I feel tired. That's because standing up to the people we love is always the hardest battle, he replied. I nodded. He understood, more than anyone in this building ever had. I walked toward the dining table and sat down, my hands folding in my lap. Mr. Hale followed slowly but remained by the doorway, giving me room to breathe. We stayed like that, quiet, steady, processing, until he finally cleared his throat. Ava, there's something I should tell you. I looked up. What is it? He hesitated, just a fraction, and for the first time that night, I saw something new in his expression. Concern, worry, a seriousness that reached deeper than neighborly duty. I didn't come because I saw the bags, he said, or because the building notified me. I blinked. Then why? He stepped forward just a little, his voice low. One of your other neighbors called me, Mrs. Patel. I frowned. Why would she? She saw your son pulling suitcases inside earlier, he explained. She said something didn't feel right. She said you looked upset the last time she saw you, and she didn't want to assume anything, but she was worried. I blinked, stunned. Mrs. Patel, the quiet woman who watered her balcony plants every morning. The one who always waved politely, but never lingered long enough to talk. She noticed, I whispered. Mr. Hale nodded gently. People see more than you think, Ava, even when you feel invisible. The words pierced through me, not painfully, but in a way that made something inside me loosen. I had spent years thinking my life existed on the edges, that no one paid much attention, but apparently someone did. She asked me to check on you, he continued. And when I knocked the first time, I heard raised voices. That's when I knocked harder. I swallowed. I didn't even hear the first knock. I figured, that's why I insisted. For the first time that night, a small laugh escaped me, a tired, grateful one. You're very persistent. He smiled faintly. Comes from 30 years of dealing with people who refuse to listen the first time. We both chuckled softly, the tension in the room easing like air slowly escaping from a balloon. Then something shifted. Not in the room. Not in the air. In me. All these years, I had taken pride in being strong, independent, unshakable. I survived raising a child alone. I survived grief. I survived heartbreak. I survived silence. And I survived being overlooked by the very person I'd given my life to raise. But tonight reminded me that independence didn't mean isolation. You know, Mr. Hale said after a moment, you don't have to go through things alone. You have people here, real people, not just neighbors, friends if you'll allow it. My chest tightened. I'm not used to relying on anyone. He nodded. Most strong people aren't, but even strong people deserve support. His words lingered, pushing gently against walls I didn't even know I'd built. I exhaled shakily. Thank you for stepping in tonight. You don't need to thank me, he said. You deserve to be heard. He hesitated again, then added, and I'm sorry your son didn't listen until he was forced to. My throat thickened. He used to listen, I whispered, when he was younger. Mr. Hale's voice softened. Children grow up. Sometimes they outgrow empathy before they outgrow age. That sentence, that truth, hit deeper than any argument could have. I looked around my apartment, my home, my sanctuary, and suddenly I realized something. Yes, tonight was painful, I said quietly, but maybe it needed to happen. Maybe I needed to set a line he couldn't cross. Mr. Hale nodded approvingly. It was the right line, and you stood your ground. He moved toward the door, stopping before opening it. If you ever feel unsafe, he said, or overwhelmed, or even just want someone to talk to, I'm right next door. He wasn't offering charity. He wasn't offering pity. He was offering respect, connection, humanity. And after everything that happened tonight, that meant more than I could say. Thank you, I whispered. He smiled gently. Get some rest, Ava. You've had a long night. I watched him leave. Quietly, respectfully, without claiming space that wasn't his. The moment the door clicked shut again, I exhaled. The apartment wasn't silent anymore. It was peaceful. Different. Lighter. Stronger. I walked to the guest room and stood in the doorway, staring at the empty bed, the cleared dresser, the untouched floor. Hours ago, this room felt invaded. Now it felt reclaimed. I touched the doorframe gently, grounding myself in the truth of this night. I had stopped a boundary from being erased. I had protected my home. I had protected my peace. I had protected myself. And later, whether days or weeks from now, there would be a conversation with Dion. A long, honest one. A necessary one. But not tonight. Tonight, the house was mine again. I walked back to my armchair, the one Chloe took earlier, and I sat down slowly, letting the familiar cushion hug my tired body. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not because everything was okay. Not because the pain was gone. But because I finally remembered something I had forgotten. Strength isn't loud. Strength is choosing yourself even when it hurts. I closed my eyes, letting the quiet settle around me. Tonight wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. It was Dion, and this time he said something I never expected. The vibration against the wooden side table broke through the quiet like a whispered warning. My eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the dim room. The phone screen glowed, bright and intrusive in the soft darkness. One notification. One name. Dion. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. Not because I was afraid of what it might say, but because I already knew whatever came next would determine whether this story had a chance at healing, or whether the fracture between us would widen beyond repair. My thumb hovered over the message. My pulse tightened. And then I tapped it. Mom, can we talk? Please don't ignore me. I didn't mean for things to go the way they did. 3 messages. Sent minutes apart. Each one a little more desperate. I leaned back in the armchair, the weight of the day sinking deeper into my chest. Of course he'd reach out. Dion was many things, stubborn, self-assured, blind to his own entitlement, but he wasn't cold. Not truly. He'd been raised with love. He'd learned compassion from me. But somewhere along the way, those pieces dimmed beneath convenience and pride. I sighed, closing my eyes briefly. Can we talk? The question echoed through me with a heavy mix of exhaustion and maternal ache. The part of me that carried him in my arms, that wiped his tears, that stood on the sidelines of every life milestone, that part wanted to say yes instantly. But the part of me that had been dismissed, overlooked, and taken for granted, the part that finally reclaimed her space tonight, hesitated. I typed slowly. Not tonight, I need time. His reply came almost immediately. Time for what? I don't understand. I set the phone down again, feeling a tired smile tug at my lips. He didn't understand because understanding required him to see me not just as mom, the eternal safety net, but as Ava, a woman with her own needs, her own boundaries, her own life. I picked up the phone once more. Time to think, time to breathe, time to process what happened. Again, the response was fast, too fast, like he was packing, panicking. You kicked us out. Not a question. A wounded statement. I exhaled. He wasn't wrong. But he wasn't right either. I answered. I asked you to respect my home. You refused. So yes, I made a decision to protect myself. This time, the typing bubble appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Then finally. I'm sorry, I just wasn't thinking. We were stressed. The renovations, the noise, the lack of space. We thought you'd be fine with it. There it was. The justification. The subtle shift that turned I'm sorry into here, why it wasn't really my fault. I leaned my head back, staring at the ceiling. People apologized all the time, but there were 2 kinds of apologies. The ones that came from the heart, and the ones that came from the fear of consequences. I wasn't sure which this was yet. I typed gently, choosing my words like fragile glass. I'm glad you apologized, but we need more than that. We need a real conversation. Not tonight, not over text. A pause. Longer this time. Then, I don't want to lose you, Mom. That sentence. That sentence cracked something inside me. Because beneath everything, beneath his thoughtlessness, his entitlement, his carelessness, he was still my child, and he was scared. Not of me. Not of Mr. Hale. Not even of what happened tonight. He was scared of losing the anchor he'd always assumed would never move. My eyes softened, the anger draining out just a little, replaced by a deeper ache. I wrote back, "You're not losing me, but you are learning where I stand." He didn't reply right away. I could imagine him sitting next to Chloe, arguing in hushed voices, guilt clashing with defensiveness. Or maybe he'd stepped outside, walking circles on the sidewalk the way he always did when something overwhelmed him. Minutes passed. Then finally, "Can we talk tomorrow?" I hesitated. Tomorrow would be raw. Tomorrow he might still be defensive. Tomorrow I might still be tired. But tomorrow was still a step forward. I typed, "Yes, afternoon." He sent a simple, "Okay." And that was it. The phone dimmed. The house quieted again. But the silence felt different now, not tense, not empty. Peaceful. Hopeful even. I stood slowly, stretching my stiff limbs, and walked toward the kitchen for a glass of water. The light from the refrigerator cast a faint glow around the room, illuminating the empty spaces where suitcases once sat. My home felt lighter. My breathing deeper. But just as I lifted the glass to sip, there was a soft knock on the door. Not firm like before. Not urgent. Gentle, hesitant. I set the glass down and walked toward it. When I opened the door, I found Mr. Hale standing there again, hands in his coat pockets, eyes full of an apology he didn't owe. "Sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to bother you. I just wanted to make sure you were all right before I turned in." "I'm fine," I said with a small smile. "Really." He studied my face for a moment and nodded. "Good, I'm glad." I stepped forward slightly, leaning against the edge of the doorframe. "Thank you," I said again, softer this time, "for everything." He lowered his gaze modestly. "It was nothing." "It wasn't nothing," I replied. "You showed up." He looked up, meeting my eyes. "That's what good neighbors do," he said gently. "What friends do." My heart warmed in a way I didn't expect. Friend. It had been a long time since someone called themselves that in my life. We shared a quiet moment, comfortable, steady, until he cleared his throat and took a step back. "Good night, Ava." "Good night." When the door closed again, I leaned my back against it, smiling into the dark. The night had torn open wounds I didn't know I still carried. But it also offered healing from a direction I never expected. Tomorrow would be another storm. Another conversation. Another reckoning. But tonight I had peace. Tonight I had clarity. Tonight I had boundaries. And for the first time in a long time, tonight I had myself. It would force me to face a truth I'd avoided for years. Morning sunlight spilled through the living room window in soft golden streaks, settling over the furniture like a quiet blessing. For the first time in a long while, I woke up without a weight in my chest, without tension in my shoulders, without the silent dread of bracing for someone else's needs the second I opened my eyes. Today was supposed to be the day I spoke with Dion. Today was supposed to be a reckoning between mother and son. But before I could even make coffee, before I could steady myself for whatever storm awaited, I heard it. 3 gentle knocks on the door. Not forceful. Not urgent. Kind, almost careful. I frowned. Dion wouldn't knock like that. He'd ring the bell twice. Chloe wouldn't knock at all. She'd text something passive-aggressive from downstairs. This knock didn't belong to either of them. I opened the door slowly. And standing, there was a familiar face I hadn't seen in months. Emily. My sister's daughter. My niece. Her eyes were red, her hands tightly gripping a purse pressed to her chest. She looked older than the last time I saw her, but not in a natural way. This was the aging of stress, of responsibility, of carrying too much on shoulders never meant to hold it. "Hi, Aunt Ava," she whispered. My heart dropped. "Emily," I stepped forward. "What happened? Are you okay?" Her lips trembled before she forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I needed to talk to you. Can I come in?" I moved aside immediately. She slipped in quietly, as if afraid she might disturb the air. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands trembling in her lap. I sat across from her, giving her space. "Emily," I said gently, "whatever it is, you can tell me." She stared at her hands for a long moment. When she finally looked up, there was something aching and heavy in her gaze. "Aunt Ava," her voice cracked, "it's about Mom." My chest tightened sharply. My sister. My only sibling. The woman who raised Emily, who laughed louder than anyone, who talked too fast, cared too deeply, and loved too fiercely. "What happened?" I asked, leaning forward. Emily swallowed hard. She's sick." The room tilted. The sunlight dimmed. "What kind of sick?" My voice trembled despite my effort to stay steady. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "It's cancer." The word hit the room like a falling stone, quiet but devastating. Not loud enough to shatter glass, but heavy enough to shatter the heart. I felt my breath catch, like someone had wrapped a hand around my ribs. "What stage?" I whispered. Emily wiped her eyes. "Late, we found out too late." God. The world seemed to shrink around us. 2 women, 2 generations, drowning in a single truth. "Why didn't she tell me?" I asked, voice breaking. "She didn't want to worry you," Emily said softly. "She thought you had enough on your plate. She kept saying, 'Ava has her own battles, I don't want to add mine.'" My heart cracked cleanly in half. My sister, a loud, stubborn, fierce sister, was fighting alone. Suffering alone. Protecting me when she needed protecting herself. Emily continued, voice trembling. "She didn't want you to see her like this. She didn't want to be a burden." Burden. The same word Chloe had thrown at me yesterday. The same fear Dion weaponized, without even realizing it. And my sister had carried it quietly, silently, until she couldn't hide it anymore. I stood up slowly, gripping the back of a chair for support. "Where is she? I need to see her." Emily hesitated. "Aunt Ava, she doesn't want visitors. She barely lets me stay. She's in pain and she's scared and she doesn't know how to face people." "I'm not people," I said firmly. "I'm her sister." Emily nodded tearfully. "I know. That's why I came, because she won't call you, but she needs you. She just doesn't know how to ask." I sat beside her on the couch, wrapping my arm around her trembling shoulders. She leaned into me, crying softly. "I can't lose her," she whispered. "I'm not ready." Neither was I. My mind raced, memories flashing like a reel of moments. Childhood winters, long phone calls, shared secrets, fights we always fixed, laughter so deep we cried. And beneath it all, an old wound I thought had scarred over long ago. "She still blames herself," Emily said suddenly, "for what happened with Dion." I stiffened. "What?" Emily wiped her eyes again. "She told me once that she regrets something she said years ago." Something cold crawled down my spine. "What did she say?" My voice came out barely audible. Emily took a shaky breath. "After you and Dion had your big argument years ago, the one where he moved out and didn't talk to you for months, she told him something." I stared at her, frozen. "She told him," Emily whispered, "that you were too controlling, that you needed to learn to let him live his life. She said it because she thought she was helping him feel less guilty." Every word felt like a needle, stitching together a truth I hadn't seen. "Emily," I whispered, "why didn't she tell me?" "She regretted it, deeply. She said she didn't realize how much it hurt you both, but she couldn't bring herself to admit it. She thought you'd hate her." Hate her? My own sister. Never. A deep ache pulsed through me, grief layered with understanding, sorrow tangled with clarity. Emily squeezed my hand. She wanted to fix things, but then she got sick. and everything got worse. Silence settled between us, heavy, thick, sacred. Finally, I whispered, "I need to see her." Emily nodded. "I'll take you." I stood up, and just as I reached for my coat, my phone buzzed again. Another message, from Dion. "Mom, please don't shut me out. I need to talk to you." "I'm outside. Can we talk now?" I froze. Outside. He was standing outside my building, right now, at the exact moment I was about to leave to face a truth far deeper than last night's argument. Emily looked at me, wide-eyed. "What are you going to do?" I stared at the door, at the shadow of a figure behind the frosted glass. Then I looked at my niece, her trembling hands, her tear-streaked face, the fear in her eyes. And just like that, I knew exactly what needed to be done. And when I opened that door, Dion wasn't the only one waiting. The hallway outside, my apartment door, felt unnaturally still. Emily rose from the couch, wiping her tears with the back of her hand as I walked toward the entrance. My heart beat with a slow, heavy rhythm, each step carrying more weight than the last. Dion was outside. My son. The same son who last night had walked out with resentment burning behind his eyes. The same son who now stood waiting, maybe to apologize, maybe to argue, maybe to cling to the version of me he thought would always bend. But this time, I wasn't walking toward an argument. I was walking toward a crossroads. And behind me, Emily sat as a reminder that life was bigger than just the two of us. Pain was bigger. Family was bigger. Love was bigger, even when it was wounded. I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and opened the door. There he was. Dion stood with his hands shoved into his jacket pockets, shoulders slightly hunched, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. His hair was messy, his jaw unshaven. Not angry, not defensive, but lost. "Hey, Mom," he breathed out as if relieved I hadn't locked the door again. But he wasn't alone. Standing a few steps behind him, arms crossed, expression hard as stone, was Chloe. My stomach tightened. Of course she came. Of course she wasn't going to let him face me alone. Control was her comfort. Supervision was her strategy. She didn't say hello. She just stared past me, as if checking whether her belongings had magically reappeared inside. Dion stepped forward. "Mom, please, we need to talk." I glanced at Emily behind me. She lowered her eyes, silently urging me to handle what needed handling. I stepped partially into the hallway, leaving the door half open behind me. "All right," I said softly. "We can talk, but not for long. I have somewhere important to be." Chloe scoffed lightly. "We drove all the way here, the least you can do." "Chloe," Dion snapped quietly. "Stop." Her mouth tightened, but she fell silent. He turned back to me. "Mom, I shouldn't have said what I said last night. I was out of line. I was stressed, and I took it out on you." I waited, letting the silence press on him until he realized surface-level remorse wouldn't be enough. He swallowed. "I didn't think about how it would feel walking into your home without asking. I'm sorry." My eyes softened, just a fraction. Not enough to forgive. Just enough to acknowledge effort. "Thank you," I said. He looked relieved, but I wasn't finished. "But apology isn't the only thing we need to talk about." Dion's shoulders tensed. I know, and I promise I'll do better. I'll respect your space. I'll call before coming over. I'll never assume again." He spoke quickly, too quickly, like someone trying to plug a dam with words before more truth leaked out. I took a slow breath. "Dion, why did you think it was acceptable to walk in without asking?" He blinked. "Because I'm your son, I didn't think I needed permission." "And why do you believe that?" I asked gently. He hesitated. His eyes shifted. His jaw clenched. Because it wasn't just him. Someone had fed that belief. Someone had nurtured it. My sister. Emily's revelation echoed through me like a quiet truth, finally stepping into the light. "You were too controlling." Let him live his life. Don't make him feel guilty. My sister had meant well, but those words had shaped years of distance between us. I didn't mention it, not yet. This wasn't the moment to open that wound. Instead, I said, being my son doesn't mean you have unlimited access to my life. Love doesn't erase boundaries. His eyes softened with guilt. I know, I just figured you'd be okay with it. You always have been. That was my mistake, I whispered. Not yours. He looked confused. Your mistake. I taught you that my needs didn't matter as long as you were comfortable, I said. And yesterday, I finally stepped out of that pattern. Dion looked away, as if ashamed. Chloe, however, stepped forward. Okay, but honestly, you're making this sound dramatic. It wasn't that deep. We were just looking for a quiet place. A quiet place that belonged to me, I said sharply. She flinched slightly, but I didn't soften. You dismissed my comfort, my privacy, and my autonomy because you both assumed I'd adjust, because I have always adjusted. Dion swallowed hard. Mom, please, I want to fix this. I don't want things to be bad between us. My chest tightened. I stepped a little closer to him. I want to fix things too, I said. But today, I can't have a long conversation. He frowned. Why, what happened? I hesitated. Do I tell him? Do I unravel the layers of pain, sickness, and regret waiting at my sister's door? Emily stepped forward quietly. Dion, it's Aunt Maria. He turned toward her. What about her? She's very sick, Emily said softly. Dion's face went pale. Sick how? Cancer, I whispered. He stepped back like the word hit him physically. No, why didn't anyone tell us? Because she was protecting us. Because she was ashamed. Because she carried guilt that wasn't entirely hers. Chloe's expression softened for the first time. Oh my God, I didn't know. Silence held all of us in its grip. I looked at Dion. At my only child. At the boy I raised alone. At the man still learning to see me beyond the title of mom. We're going to see her now, I said. Emily came to take me. He looked at me with wide, wet eyes. Can we come too? My breath caught. For the first time since all this began, I saw sincerity. Not panic, not entitlement, not pride. Just genuine human grief. Yes, I whispered. You can come. His shoulders sagged with relief. But before we could leave, Chloe stepped forward again, her face unexpectedly soft. Ava, she said quietly, I'm sorry too, for yesterday. The apology wasn't perfect. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't poetic. But it was real. I nodded once, thank you. We gathered our things. Emily wiped her tears. Dion steadied himself. Chloe held onto his arm. I locked the door behind me. Not because I feared intrusion, but because the chapter behind it had finally closed. And as we walked down the hallway together, toward a car waiting to carry us into a future none of us were prepared for, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Unity. Fragile, new, delicate, but real. And what she said before even hugging me changed everything. The drive to my sister's house felt longer than it ever had before. Even though the roads were familiar, every turn carried a weight I wasn't ready to name. Emily drove with both hands gripping the wheel, knuckles white, breath shallow. Dion sat beside me in the back, unusually quiet, as though every apology he meant to say had tangled itself around his tongue. Chloe kept her hands clasped, glancing between all of us, unsure of her role but aware that something sacred was unfolding. As we pulled into the neighborhood, my pulse quickened. The house looked the same, small porch, yellowed grass, a crooked wind chime swaying gently in the morning breeze. But everything in me knew it wasn't the same. Loss had touched it. Illness had curled itself into its corners. Fear lived behind that door. We stepped out of the car, and Emily led the way up the steps. She paused at the door, took a shaky breath, and whispered, "Be gentle. She's proud even now." My heart clenched. She knocked softly. For a moment, nothing happened. No footsteps, no shuffling, no familiar call of coming. Just silence. Then finally, the door handle turned. The door opened. And there she was. My sister. Maria. But not the Maria I remembered. She stood small, frail, wrapped in a thin cardigan despite the warm day. Her hair, once thick and wild, had thinned dramatically, tucked behind her ears with trembling hands. Her skin was pale, her cheekbones sharper, her eyes tired. Tired in a way no amount of sleep could fix. But when she saw me, her breath caught, and for just a split second, that sister I grew up with flickered back to life. "Ava," she whispered, voice breaking. I stepped forward slowly, afraid that moving too fast might shatter her. "Maria," I whispered back. She reached out a trembling hand, not for a hug, not yet, but just to touch my arm as if confirming I was real. But instead of falling into my arms like I expected, she did something I never could have predicted. She leaned forward and whispered, "I'm so sorry." I froze. Completely. She didn't hug me. She didn't explain. She apologized. My eyes widened and I gently held her shoulders. "Maria, what are you talking about?" Tears welled in her eyes. She looked at me as if the weight of years pressed against her chest. "I shouldn't have said what I said to Dion," she breathed out. "I never meant to drive a wedge between you. I thought I was helping him. I thought I was protecting him from guilt." My breath hitched. Emily told the truth, then. Maria blinked rapidly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I should have come to you. I should have told you what he said that day. I made things worse, and I've lived with that guilt ever since." My vision blurred. Not with anger, not with resentment. With grief. Pure, crushing grief. "Maria," my voice cracked. "You didn't ruin anything. You're my sister. I never hated you." She shook her head stubbornly. "I hurt you. I hurt your relationship with your son." "No," I said softly, brushing her arm. "Life hurt us. Misunderstandings hurt us. But you, Maria, you've always been my heart." Her lips trembled, and for the first time in years, we closed the gap between us and fell into a long, shaking embrace. Her arms were weak, but the love in them was fierce. Behind us, I heard Dion inhale sharply. Chloe swallowed. Emily wiped her tears quietly. Maria pulled back, just enough to look at Dion. "Come here, sweetheart," she said gently. He stepped forward like a boy again, unsure but hopeful. Maria placed her trembling hand on his cheek. "I'm sorry, Dion. I influenced you when I shouldn't have. Your mother has loved you every second of her life. I should have never let you doubt that." Dion's throat tightened, tears gathering. "Aunt Maria, I didn't blame you. I blamed myself." "You were a child," she whispered. "I should have guided you, not fed your frustration. I thought I was shielding you. Instead, I made you walk away from the one person who would never stop loving you." Dion swallowed hard and looked at me, really looked at me. And I saw something new in his eyes. Understanding. Recognition. Humility. "Mom," he whispered, "I'm so sorry." I placed my hand over his. "We can fix this, together." Maria gave us a tearful smile, but then she winced, just slightly, before steadying herself against the doorframe. Her breath trembled. Emily hurried to her side. "Mom, let's sit." Maria nodded weakly. Yes, I think that's a good idea." We helped her inside. The house was dim, quiet, heavy with medication bottles on the table, blankets folded neatly on the couch, and a faint scent of lavender, as if someone was trying desperately to keep peace present in the home. Maria sat slowly, exhaling like each breath required will. "I didn't call because I didn't want pity," she said softly. "I've lived my whole life with pride, sometimes too much of it." I sat beside her. "I'm not here out of pity. I'm here because I love you." She smiled weakly. "And I love you, Ava, more than you ever knew." Silence settled, warm, emotional healing. After a moment, Maria looked at all of us. "There's something else I need to tell you," she said quietly. Her voice was thin, but her eyes held unmistakable determination. We leaned in. I didn't just ask Emily to bring you because I'm sick, she said. I asked her because I don't want to die with secrets. My breath caught. What secret? I whispered. Maria looked at me, straight into my eyes. Ava, I've been holding something in for years, something about your father. The room went completely still. Emily gasped softly. Dion's eyebrows shot up. Chloe's eyes widened. And my heart stopped. Maria inhaled deeply. He didn't die the way you think he did. Part 10 will expose the secret Maria kept buried all these years. For a heartbeat, the world simply stopped. Maria's words hovered in the silence like a ghost, refusing to fade. He didn't die the way you think he did. My lungs forgot how to pull air. Emily's hands froze mid-movement. Dion stiffened, eyes flicking between us. Even Chloe, who usually had something to say about everything, sank into a stunned stillness. My father. The man whose death shaped every corner of my childhood. The man whose absence built the foundation of the woman I became. The man I grieved, missed, resented, forgave, and loved, all in the same breath for decades. I swallowed, my voice barely a whisper. Maria, what do you mean? She closed her eyes briefly, gathering strength, as though pulling memories from places she had buried for far too long. When she opened them again, the weight of her guilt trembled behind her lashes. Ava, Dad didn't die in an accident. Cold air rushed through me. What? My voice cracked. She nodded slowly, painfully. It wasn't an accident, not the way Mom told you, not the way I let you believe. I shook my head, but the car, his truck, everyone said. A lie, she whispered, a carefully constructed lie. The room tilted slightly, as if reality itself was struggling to stay balanced. Emily reached for her mother's hand, steadying her. Mom, maybe you should rest. No, Maria rasped. I've hidden this for far too long, and if I don't say it now, I might never get another chance. My heart clenched. She was right. Time was no longer a guarantee. Tell me, I urged softly. Maria inhaled shakily. Dad, he didn't crash because he fell asleep at the wheel. He crashed trying to get away. I blinked. Get away from what? Her eyes filled. From us. My breath caught violently in my throat. No, I whispered. No, you're lying. I wish I were, she said, voice shaking. But I'm not. The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Maria continued, each word trembling. Dad was leaving, not for a trip, not for work, for good. My stomach twisted. My hands trembled. I felt like a child again, confused, scared, abandoned. He wouldn't, I whispered. He loved us. He loved us in his own way, Maria said softly. But he was drowning, Ava, drowning in debts, in stress, in guilt. He felt trapped. He'd been planning to run for months. I overheard him and Mom arguing the night before he left. My heart ached. I didn't want to hear this. I wanted the lie back, the comforting lie. What were they arguing about? Dion asked quietly, his voice gentle, afraid to break me further. Maria wiped her eyes. Money, shame, decisions he made that put us in danger. There were loan sharks involved. He wasn't the man we believed he was. I shook my head again, softer this time, as though trying to shake away a nightmare. Maria reached for my hand with trembling fingers. The morning he died, he took a bag. Clothes, papers, money, he was leaving us behind. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I didn't even try to stop them. Why didn't Mom tell me? I whispered. She wanted to protect you, Maria said. She thought losing him was already traumatic enough. She didn't want you thinking he abandoned you willingly. I exhaled shakily. And you, why didn't you tell me? Maria looked down, shame etched into every line of her face. Because I was angry at him, and angry at Mom, and angry at myself. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to face it. And as time passed, the secret became heavier, harder to touch. She looked up again, eyes glassy with regret. But the worst part, Ava, isn't that he left. It's what happened next. My heart dropped. There's more. She nodded. The accident wasn't immediate. The crash, it happened because he turned back. I froze. He turned back, I repeated. Maria nodded harder now, tears running freely. Yes, he was leaving, but halfway down the road, he changed his mind. He turned around. A witness saw him and told the authorities later. I covered my mouth with my hand. He didn't want to leave us, she sobbed. He panicked, regretted it, tried to come home, but on the way back. Her voice broke completely. On the way back, his truck skidded on the curve and crashed into an embankment. I felt my knees weaken. Dion placed a steady hand on my shoulder. Emily sniffled quietly. Maria whispered, "He died trying to return." I sank into the chair beside her, trembling uncontrollably. All these years. All the anger. All the grief. All the unanswered questions. And the truth was both worse and more healing than I ever imagined. He wasn't abandoning us, I whispered. No, Maria sobbed. He was flawed, he was scared, but in the end he chose us. A long, painful silence stretched across the room. Finally, Maria forced out, "I'm so sorry, Ava. I should have told you long ago. You deserve to know." I took her hand gently. Despite everything, despite the decades of silence, despite the shock. "I don't blame you," I whispered. "Not anymore." She looked stunned. "You did what you thought was right," I said. "We all did, and maybe now, maybe knowing the truth will let me heal in a way I never could before." Maria broke down, sobbing openly, clinging to my hand as if she had been waiting years for forgiveness. After a moment, Dion sank to one knee beside us. Tears lined his face too. "Aunt Maria," he whispered, "thank you for telling us the truth." Chloe stood silently behind him, her hand resting gently on his back, a gesture so surprisingly tender that for the first time, I saw her not as an enemy, but as someone who truly loved my son. Maria wiped her eyes. I didn't want to die with this on my heart. I leaned my forehead against hers. "You won't," I said softly. And in that fragile moment, surrounded by family, tears, and truth, I felt something strange warming inside me. Not just grief, not just pain, but release. For the first time in my life, I finally understood the man I lost, and the woman I had become because of it.